Welcome to tonight's briefing for the Revolution of Reason. I'm Robert L. Blackburn. I'm an Insurgent General in the Revolution of Reason. If you want to learn more about the Revolution of Reason, go to revolutionofreason.com. We have talked about the revolution. We have talked about a computer program of the human mind. We have talked about changing the world. And when you speak about changing the world, that brings us to tonight's topic, why and how. Why would anyone take on the thankless task of doing something that will only get him laughed at by anyone that he mentions to what he's doing? Why? Because the world is in a lot of trouble and it has to be done. That's why me, because I thought about the situation and think I came up with a solution. And if you do that, you automatically inherit an obligation to do something about it. You automatically jump to how. And that's remind me of my brother Jim. There were 5 of us boys. Jim was the only one that took to farming. He loved it. He had to take a state job so he could own his own little farm. And Jim did not understand the concept of impossible or it can't be done. I remember one time I pulled up when he was building a brick house behind his little white frame house that was built there when he bought the farm, and he had a bulldozer he'd borrowed from a neighbor, and it was slanted down and against the foundation of his house that he was filling in around. And he yelled down at me and he said, "Bob," he said, "you ever put a clutch in a bulldozer?" I said, "No, I haven't, Jim." And he said, "Well, grab that sledgehammer out of that shed there, bring it up here." I said, "I think we can find it." And by the end of the day, he had taken the clutch out. He had found it. He had taken it out. He had taken it to town when the bulldozer place was closed, and he had to match up a clutch with a truck clutch and an auto parts store, which he did, and he had it running for the end of the day. Jim died when he was 39, and I was 38 at the time. He had small children. He did outlive his doctor. His doctor committed suicide. I don't know, can't know for sure, but I suppose he'd seen too many Jims die. I remember one fall, I left my desk job to go out and help Jim cut tobacco. Now, for those that haven't cut tobacco, which I assume is most of you, it is not an easy chore. It's a hot time of the year, really hot. These stalks are over your head. You've got to cut them down with this tomahawk, they call it. It's like a hatchet, a light hatchet on about a 2-foot handle. And you've got to put them on this sharp spear that you've placed in the ground. And you've put a sharp spear on the end of this tobacco stick. You put the stick in the ground, and you put the spear over the end of it, and then the tobacco stalk has to go, it splits it when it goes down, the spear goes through it. But it's a thankless job. And Jim we were cutting, and I was about a third through my row, cutting it and putting it on these sticks, and Jim was walking backing up, having finished his row, walking back. And a few minutes later, here he comes by on the next row over, going chomp, chomp, chomp. And before I'm halfway to the middle of the row, he's walking back again. And this time he stops, and he said, "Bobby," because I would stop periodically. I'd stop and look over what all I had cut, and you know, that's a pretty good job. See how they were standing up straight and that sort of thing, my sticks, and look at what I got to do, and then get back down and cut some more. He said, "You know, Bobby," said, "if you want to get to the end of the row, you got to stay in, stay down, and keep cutting." Well, that stuck with me. I pretty much lived by that through this endeavor. And that last stay in the hospital, Jim knew he wasn't going to come back out. He had done everything he could do for his, his family. There was no more arrangements he could make. The only thing he had was this cow down in his barn, and this bothered him to no end. He wanted that cow up, and each night he'd send me home with new instructions on where to rig the pulleys. If a cow is sick and it stays down on the ground, it'll die. You have to get the cow back up on its feet, and he wanted that cow back up on her feet. And he'd send me with instructions how to rig the pulleys, what neighbors to get, and I'd come back the next day, and the first thing he'd say when I walked through the door of his hospital room was, "Did you get her up?" And I'd report unsuccessful, and he would just, it wouldn't faze him that much. He would just come up with a new set of instructions, maybe a different neighbor to try, something else, but send me back again. That's the attitude I've taken toward seeking to do the impossible, which is changing a world, obviously. One of the things I did in my effort after when I was visiting Jim in the hospital, I had told him about my ideas and how I thought I'd like to write them down in a book or something. He encouraged me to do so. He listened to my concepts and thought it would be a good idea. The last day in the hospital for Jim, on those rides back and forth, I did a lot of thinking, and one of the thoughts I had, well, what if I were in his position and it were me? What would cause me concern? And I realized that if I hadn't written down what I think I've come up with, that I'd probably be in almost a panic if I were going to die with these thoughts in my head and didn't do anything about them. So when I had a chance, I did get an opportunity. I wrote the Mind and Surgeon Handbook, Official Field Manual for the Revolution of Reason. It's on the website. I wrote the Computer Program of the Human Mind. It's on the website. Then I wrote, after I wrote those two, I wrote Ben and the Critter Congress, a little talking animal fantasy, which was designed just to, hopefully I could just, wanted to write it well enough to get enough interest to bring attention to the other two works. The title of the Mind and Surgeon Handbook, the full title is mentioned in Ben and the Critter Congress. You can get a copy on eBay probably. I got 2 or 3 of them. I mean, I self-published. But it didn't work anyway, so it didn't make any difference. It did have, and why I brought it up, I dedicated that work to Jim because I couldn't have written those 2 works that are on the website and the Ben and the Critter Congress without his inspiration. And the dedication, excuse me, it went dedicated to my brother Jim, who under the late afternoon sun, when I couldn't go on, wouldn't quit. With so much tobacco behind us and twice that again ahead, I did go on because Jim went on, cutting 2 rows to my one. The relentless rhythm of his tomahawk would pass me by and negate impossible. Thank you. Buffy, it's time to go. I'll catch you the next time.